Hi, it's Rob from the Brush and Bolt Gun. Today's tutorial is going to be how to paint the Dead of Dunharrow from Middle-earth Strategy Barrel. If you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon page are linked below, and please like, comment and subscribe as that does help the channel. Now, onto the video. So this is the finished miniature that we're going to be working on. As you can see, it's the Dead of Dunharrow from the Pelennor Fields box, one of the plastic miniatures. Really cool miniature, they've all got loads of little cool details and stuff like that, and it's this one that we're going to be working on today. Now while we're doing this one, we're also going to be showing you how to paint the guy on the left too. I did that in a slightly different style, so while we're going to be working on the one on the right, the one on the left, I'll tell you how you can achieve this look, because it is ever so slightly different. Now the miniature has been sprayed white to begin with, and I'm going to be starting with a bit of contrast dark oak flesh, but it doesn't really matter too much which colours you're going to be using here. All I'm doing is, when you look at them in the films, they have little hints of colour all over for different parts, like the clothing and the armour and stuff like that. So what I'm doing is I'm using shades and some quite thin contrasts anyway, like dark oak flesh, to add a little bit of colour. So this first initial part is adding those colours, so a little bit of Cassandora yellow next. But what you don't have to do is add the colours if you don't want to. If you don't want any of those colours showing through, or the hints of colour, you can just leave it as is, and then I'll let you know when to come back to the video so that you can see how to do it without those colours. So I'm using Vallejo red shade here. It's a good one to use because it's quite a thin one compared to Carroburg Crimson. When you use that, it's got a lot of pigments in it. It's very, very dark, and it does stand out quite a bit, whereas this one is a lot thinner and adds that kind of red hue to it without it being too dark. So the other miniature that you saw earlier on is painted exactly the same as this, but without those colours being added. So next we're going to use a tiny little bit of Citadel Iron Hand Steel. I'm going to use this to do the edges of the shield where they have that kind of metal bracing on it. You've got the sword, chainmail, and any other little bits that you want to do, like the end of the scabbard. Use a little bit of Citadel Athonian Camo shade next. It's a nice colour to do greens with on them because it's quite thin, and it does leave that hint of green on the areas that you're putting it on, while not being too dark and too overpowering when you come to shade it later. Now if you want to paint it like the other miniature, you're going to start off on a plain white using Nighthaunt Gloom like this, and Briar Chill, which is the other contrast. And all we're going to do for these is use the Nighthaunt Gloom to paint all the darker recesses and the bits that are in the shade, kind of like under the armpits, under his hand, under the shield, and those kind of areas, and those big creases in his cloak, little bits under the chin, maybe in his eyes and things like that. So you're going to put this on. You're going to put it on quite thick because you want to be using the two of them together so that you can mix the Briar Chill in with the Nighthaunt Gloom too. So once you've plastered all this on, you're then going to use a little bit of the Briar Chill and start adding that on as like the lighter colour. Again, because it's a contrast, you do apply that quite thick, and you can also, as they're both quite wet, blend them in a little bit together if you want to. So I'm just going to show you this whole process so you can get a good understanding of it. Good thing about these contrasts is you can just lash them on, you don't have to be too careful, and because he's kind of ghostly, you don't have to worry about it too much about going over some of the Nighthaunt Gloom as well. If you need to, you can just add another little bit of that and spread that up into the recesses where you need it to go. We're now going on to Citadel Deepkin Flesh, and this is for when your contrasts have dried. We're just going to use a small dry brush. We're going to dry brush this over the whole miniature. Now when you dry brush and you want to get some paint on your brush, wipe off pretty much all of it so you've just got a little bit of colour left on there, and then just gently drag that over the miniature. That will pick up all the details and all the edges and make them stand out quite nicely. We are going to be using some Vallejo white, or whichever white that you use is fine, as long as it's a lighter shade than Deepkin Flesh. I'm going to use a smaller brush, and we are going to gently dry brush this onto the miniature again, just to pick out all those highlights, and the white will make them stand out quite a lot and look like they are having that nice ethereal glow. Finally, we're going to use a tiny little bit of Nighthaunt Gloom, and this is going to be to give the Dead of Dunharrow those creepy little bits of green glow they tend to have dotted around. So you don't really have to go for any particular areas in this. I'm just adding this really thinly to certain points on the miniature, just to give them that slightly weird green glow. That will be a nice finishing touch for the Dead of Dunharrow. And this is the finished miniature. Really pleased with how it turned out. And because of the quickness of doing this, I managed to paint up the entire unit of the Dead of Dunharrow 2 from the Pelennor Field box. You'll be seeing them in a moment. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much. If you like the channel and you enjoy the content, please like, comment and subscribe. And if you'd like to support me further, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.